Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about our next storm system and Arctic blasts, plus the overall weather for the next 7 to 10 days. So if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. Good morning everyone, I'm back. I took the weekend off to spend a lot of time with my family and just kind of reset and regroup, but we got some things to talk about this week, so let's delve into the details on the overall water vapor imagery on the North American view. You can really kind of see how this week's going to play out. We've got a ridge of high pressure that's going to be dominating for much of the west coast and the central plains. Underneath that, we got a lot of sinking air, but that means we got a lot of nice weather too, and a lot of dry weather as well. But off the east coast, we do have an area of instability of this upper level low pressure system that's forming off the Carolina coast. That's actually going to bring some freezing rain this morning, as well as some snow showers as we traverse up the I-95 corridor, where they've actually got some winter weather advisories in place right now. So yeah, there's a winter weather advisories in places into the Carolinas, into the Charlotte area, as well as we traverse up the coast. Along the I-95 corridor, we've got pretty much all of Jersey under a winter weather advisory, Long Island, getting into Connecticut and Massachusetts, places into Vermont, New Hampshire, as well as into Maine, as we got some cold air as this upper level low is coming up the coast. We've got some freezing rain impacting much of the morning commute. So please take it slow if you live in this area, because a lot of this is just kind of a glazing as temperatures start to fall and creep down a little bit below that freezing line. And as it does, we're starting to get some glazing on the roadways this morning. So if you live in and around the North Carolina and the Charlotte area, please take it easy, because this is continue to intensify. And as it comes up the coast, we've got some snow kind of changing over from that rain to the kind of that sleet snow mix in places into Jersey, going into Long Island, getting into Rhode Island and into Connecticut and much portions of Massachusetts. We're starting to get a little changeover in and around the Boston area. So yeah, things are changing this morning as this continues to lift up. But underneath that, once we get into the afternoon hours, all this changes into rain, because temperature is going to be plenty warm, above freezing by then. And much of the Carolinas, much of Virginia, going up the east coast into Delaware and places into Jersey. But it's still going to be cold enough, as we've got that northwest flow still kicking in further off to the north. So we're going to be starting to see that changeover even in the afternoon hours. And some of these winter weather advisories have been extended. So as you get further up the coast here and portions of Connecticut going into Massachusetts, you're starting to get that changeover even in the afternoon hours from that freezing rain, and then all snow as you get places into Vermont and New Hampshire and going into Maine. So as we extend the view and kind of look at some of the freezing rain totals, yeah, some of this could be a glazing up to 1/10 of an inch on the roadway. So that is some dangerous. A glaze can do a lot more, impact than sometimes even 1/10 of an inch, because you're really not expecting it to be on the roadways. They got a lot of black ice in the area. And so please take it slow in these areas, because temperatures continue to fall, especially just in the morning hours. Once you get into the afternoon hours, I think things are fine. But as you get into the afternoon hours, if you live in northern areas, going into Connecticut, going into Rhode Island, going into Massachusetts. So some of this is going to be lasting even into the afternoon hours. So yeah, a good glaze to up to 1/10 of an inch of ice is definitely expected in these areas as you go through the rest of the day. So here's the setup for the rest of the country as you see this ridge of high pressure really dominating. The flow is off the Pacific this week, and that's more of a zonal flow as the jet stream is lifting well to the north. We had an extremely active week last week, so things tend to settle down. And when they settle down, we've got a lot of nice weather for a good chunk of the country. So at least for the first half of the work week, a lot of you guys are experiencing a lot of sunshine and a lot of just nice weather overall. But here's the setup for later on this afternoon from the Carolinas all the way up the I-95 corridor, you are going to be dealing with some of that mixed precipitation. And as you get further to the north, we're going to be changing most of that over into snow into Vermont and New Hampshire and going the northern parts of Maine as the jet stream is well to the north. And we could be getting some of that sporadic lake effect snow showers off the northwest flow along the Great Lakes. So as you transition into tomorrow on Tuesday, kind of the same deal. That front continues to push off the coast. We won't be really dealing with that upper level low for much of the Carolinas. Now it'll be further off to the north. So we're going to be dealing with some of that snow showers breaking out into Vermont and New Hampshire, going into Maine, and a lot of this instability is, again, well to the north up in Canada, up into northern parts of Wisconsin, northern parts of Michigan here, as the rest of the country will be experiencing that dome of high pressure underneath it with a lot of sinking air. That means a lot of sunshine for a good chunk of the country. So as we transition into that Wednesday time frame, we've got subtle fronts, but most of these are more or less dry fronts. So that transition into Oklahoma and to Texas with this front, there's not really going to be any cold air really technically behind it. It's just going to be change in wind direction as more or less you get these drier fronts move through. But yeah, the jet stream continues to remain well to the north, as we do have some little bit of rain showers into central and southern Florida as we get into the day on a Wednesday. So, but here's the overall setup between now and Wednesday, where the snow is going to be flying in much of parts of Canada here, upper portions of Minnesota, along the upper peninsula of the Great Lakes here. But yes, as you get into portions of Vermont and New Hampshire, especially going into Maine, this is a good swath of 3 to 6 inches of snow is definitely not out of the question. And some of these amounts could upwards to 8 to 10 inches in some of these isolated spots, especially as you get into Maine, up towards Caribou, throughout the day, with the combination of that upper level low and that traversing clipper systems that are going to be coming through from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday time frame. So if we expand the view and check out Wednesday's temperatures for much of the country, with that zonal flow pushing off the west coast, here's as you get into that noon time frame on that Wednesday, yeah, much of this is more or less average to slightly below average for a good chunk of the south. The Arctic air is well to the north. We're waiting for that jet stream to kind of buckle, but it looks to buckle as we get in towards midweek, and especially as we go into the weekend time frame. Because when we look at the overall jet stream on Thursday, February the 10th, you can see where all the sinking air is and where the ridge of high pressure is. That's that big H here. That is an indication of a lot of warmer temperatures in some of these areas off the west coast and the Pacific Northwest. Could be experiencing some of your daily record high temperatures with this sinking air going to be in place for. So yes, most of the country is going to be above average by Thursday, with that jet stream well to the north and that Arctic air well into Canada. But by the time we get into that Saturday time frame, we see like these impulses of this Arctic air is going to be pushing southward. And as it does, it's going to be modifying that 1042 Arctic high pressure, the really cold stuff, is going to be highlighted over Minnesota, over Wisconsin, over Michigan, or along this green area. But as you get towards these yellows and these red areas, that's the indication where that cold front is going to all push all the way through, mainly east of the Rocky Mountains, as that ridge is still going to be dominating for much of the west and the Pacific Northwest and much of the southwest. A lot of sinking air into this area, as the cold front will be able to push into Oklahoma. It'll probably push into places as far south as North Texas, but I think that's kind of where it stops. And this will traverse across into portions of the southeast and go into off the east coast with our next potential setup as we get to later on in the weekend towards Valentine's Day. So here's the overall temperatures as we get to that Saturday time frame with that push of Arctic air. These are expected kind of high temperatures for the day. You can see, yeah, that Arctic air continues to impulse and push further off to the south. The truly Arctic air is to the north with these below zero temperatures in a lot of these areas. into the purple shaded area. But yeah, even, these are high temperatures, folks, and you're talking the low teens in Iowa, getting into the 20s in Missouri, getting into teens in Illinois, Indiana, into Ohio here, places into the mid-Atlantic, as it continues to push into the 40s in Oklahoma, and even 47 in places far south as Dallas, or high temperatures. So that's a big transition of what you're going to be able to, seeing for much of the week. And where that ridge is off the west coast, that's plenty warm temperatures with highs in the 60s, if not 70s, and going towards 80s as you get into portions of the desert southwest. And yeah, you can definitely see further to the south where that cold front technically is not really going to make it as we get into that in places into Florida as we get into that Saturday time frame. But yes, as we go into the weekend, we're going to be watching, along with that cold front, this trough that's going to be digging down to the midsection of the country. And here's the areas of instability, or the energy in the atmosphere, as this continues to move across. So we'll be watching the influence of this ridge that's going to be dominating for much of the west coast. And that's going to play a key role, because here's the latest European guidance. With this ridge of high pressure, it doesn't actually have it as intense and pushes it further off into the east coast. It has it a little bit further off west. That would allow the trough to dig a little bit further down into the south and really amplify and dig all the way into portions of the southeast. So if that were to come to fruition, by the time we make that low coming off the east coast, it'll have plenty of time to amplify. And once it does, there's plenty of cold air in place. And that would be a formidable low pressure that would be setting up off the east coast. And that would ride up places in the I-95 corridor and bring in a pretty good snowstorm for places in the northeast as we get into that late Sunday into Monday time frame. But it's all about timing with systems, because looking at the latest at GFS, it actually has the ridge a little bit more stronger, and stronger meaning it pushes it further east. And if that were to come to fruition, this trough would not be able to connect by then, or even be amplified, because this would be the exact same time frame that the European has it right now. So here's the two different setups we have, because it's all about timing with these systems. Of course, we're still 6 days out. But if this were to come to fruition, with this ridge continue to build and be a little bit further off into the east, it would not be able to have this area of instability to be able to connect and reach as far south. And by the time it gets off the east coast, then yeah, it's going to be a lot more progressive type system, meaning it's going to be moving too fast. And by the time it does connect, it's going to be well offshore and put the snowstorm out in the middle of the ocean. So we're watching the exact timing of it and the dominance of this ridge of high pressure. If it's able to be able to back off a little bit and not be nearly as intense, and with the influence of this Arctic air that's going to be pushing off towards the Rockies here, the exact timing, if this vorticity is able to amplify and dig further off to the southeast, then yes, we could be talking about a fairly significant snowstorm off the east coast. But yeah, that's not all set in stone right now. We got a lot to work out in the days ahead. But that looks to be our next setup as we go into late this weekend into the Monday timeframe for Valentine's Day, because yeah, we're going to have plenty of cold air. So that impulse pushes all the way into portions of Dallas, but it's just kind of a glancing blow. And then by the time we get into that Monday timeframe for your low temperatures, yeah, we got plenty of cold air, and that Arctic air sinks all the way down into the southeast with 20s for low temperatures, even freezing for the panhandle. And as you go up to the north, if we do have an upper level low system off the east coast here, these temperatures are plenty cold to be all snow in these areas as we get into that time frame, because we got that true Arctic air pushing further off to the south, more or less locked into Canada, but having those below zero temperatures for low temperatures as we get into Minnesota, into Wisconsin, and going into the upper portions of PA, and then going into Maine. But as we get into kind of extend the view and go beyond this week and go into next week, I think that's when things looked a little bit more active for more of the country, because right now we've got much of the West and the Pacific Northwest with this positive P&A here, which is your Pacific North American being more or less positive. That puts the ridge dominating over the much of the West. But we're going to be making a transition by the time we get into that mid-month time frame where the P&A does go negative. And as it gets deeper into that third week of February, it continues to nosedive and get further negative. So that's going to be able to put the troughs and setting up these systems a little bit further off into the West. And so, yes, by the time we get into that, next week, and after we get into beyond next week into that mid-month time frame, that ridge would back off significantly and push it further off the West Coast. That would allow troughs to dig in further off and set up further west. And as the P&A continues to amplify and dig a little bit further south and further negative, that's just going to be able to amplify these troughs. And as we get deeper into that beyond mid-February timeframe, that would really amplify the systems and probably set up a fairly active week. Not this week, but next week, as we go through time with these setups in the midsection of the country, bringing down a lot of colder air and a lot more instability with these troughs reaching further south, setting up more opportunities for snow and rain, and even probably portions of the southeast, maybe even getting some severe weather as well. So there's going to be a lot to look for, and for next week for a good chunk of the country. But this week, what we're working with in the setup is a lot of dry air and a lot of sinking air going to be underneath that, because here's the precipitation on the latest European between now and Sunday, right? With that ridge really dominating for much of the Pacific Northwest and much of the West. There's a lot of sinking air. There's no upward rising motion air in that type atmosphere. We've got a lot of these areas going to be high and dry. So really the main setup we're looking at this week is these little clipper systems that come across the upper Great Lakes into portions of the Northeast with some snow into much of northern New England. And then we'll be watching this setup as we get into late Sunday, going into Monday for portions of the Northeast. And here's the latest GFS, kind of implies the same thing. Much of the country is going to be really kind of high and dry over portions of the West and the Central Plains here. We could have some sporadic showers with that Arctic front just right on that demarcation line of the east of the Rockies, but that's not much really precipitation to be working with, as the main setups is going to be off the Clipper system, and much of the connection and the intensity of the ridge and how dominant that's going to be, and the exact timing, how this is all going to play out by the time we get into Sunday, into that Monday time frame. So we'll be fine-tuning this as we go throughout the week. Definitely keep you ahead of the storm. So I appreciate you guys watching. It's good to be back, guys, to give you my daily updates. So stay tuned for tomorrow's video where I protect you before and after the storm.